Hi, everyone. This is Sebastian Traeger, Managing Director with Reliability.com, and we are back with another episode of Reliability 4.0. As always, we're on a mission to help make the world a more reliable place. And today we are thrilled to be joined by our guest, Michelle Legge, with the AES Corporation. And we're thrilled to have her because she knows a lot. She's a senior reliability engineer. She's been working with our company for years, so we're also thrilled to have her and really thankful for her. So, Michelle, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, just to start, would love to just have you share a little bit about AES, what the company does, and tell us a little bit more about that.
So the AES Corporation is a global energy power type company. So we have every type of power except for nuclear, pretty much across all across the world. We operate in 14 countries. We have I couldn't even tell you how many gigabytes it changes, or gigawatts changes every day, because we're always buying, selling, building, and putting new stuff online. So, but like I said, we operate in 14 countries, and probably the biggest chunk of our operating sites are in U.S. and South America, Latin America. We have a few in Eurasia.
Great. But, and do you head down there often or ever to some of those plants?
Yes. Okay. I have been to some of the plants in South America. I've been to all of the plants in the U.S.
Okay. Good. Well, and tell us a little bit about your role there then. What do you do for the company?
So I'm a senior reliability engineer, but I'm also the GEAPM Global Program Manager, and that probably consumes more of my time than anything.
Okay.
So GEAPM is asset performance management. So it's a tool that we use to help with increasing our reliability. So keeping up with that, and I'm not an IT person by any means,
right?
But keeping that software up and running and going and helping people globally with their issues, and it's a full-time job.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna dive into that in a moment, but just kind of before we do that, just a couple things about you. Love to have folks who are listening just get to know you a little bit more. What's your origin story in terms of how you ended up in kind of becoming a reliability engineer? How did that come about?
So my story is kind of unique in the fact that it wasn't an intentional thing. So I was in a very destructive marriage and had 3 kids and decided, it was time to go. So I packed up my 3 kids and we had 5 changes of clothes, $150, and we moved to another state, which is where my mom was located. So I had some support. So I started school. I'd always wanted to go to school, always wanted to be an electrical engineer. I mean, since I was a small child. And so I finally got that opportunity to go to college. So I started at the local community college to get an engineering technology degree, to get my associates. So that was I'm a step person. So that was a big deal for me to get that associate's degree and get that step. So once I did that, I completed my degree, single mom, 3 kids, worked part-time, went to school full-time. And while I was there, the local power plant requested, actually a contractor for a local power plant requested a intern. And I was the only intern that the school even recommended at the time. And so I interviewed, and I started working at the power plant. And I'll never forget, as long as I live, my first step, my first pulling into that power plant and realizing how huge everything was. It was just breathtaking. But it was just so cool to me. But I started working there, working at the power plant for a contractor as an intern, and was more exposed. So the more I became exposed to different things, especially problems, the more, I kind of started, routing my direction. When I was an intern, I was a clerk, I was a scheduler, So I did different roles within being that intern. And then once I graduated with my associate's degree, I transferred to university to get my bachelor's degree. Well, at that time, I'm a single mom. I'm working full time at a power plant and going to school, part time. I wasn't going full time because there was no way I could. And then it got to be too much at the time with, for a while there. So I had to take a step back. I took a little bit of time off. I went back to school. Like I said, full time, 3 kids, single mom. My kids were 3, 7, and 9 when we moved.
Wow, that's
here.
Incredible. Okay.
Yeah, my 3 boys. So it was it was busy and it was a challenge. And I've got to tell you, communities are everything. The community helps raise your family. But once the project was over for the contractor, they moved on and I got hired by the power plant company itself. And so they hired me as a scheduler. And from there, I became a planner. Well, if you're a planner and a scheduler, reliability is huge to you. I mean, it becomes more and more blatantly obvious, and you're very, very apt at trying to prevent things from happening, right? So the more in depth and the more I, worked in that, I became planning manager for one of the power plants. Then I became planning manager of both power plants, and these were big coal-fired power plants.
Right.
And then of course, them being coal-fired power plants, they were closing, and because of the way the world is today, so we shut down those power plants, and in the process, I went to work for the parent company in the corporate office in Indianapolis. And then with that, I worked for the global norms and standards, which was part of, asset management as well. And as part of the global norms and standards, we implemented this GEAPM software. Then I became a reliability engineer, and I was a reliability engineer manager for all the U.S. reliability engineers at one point in time as well. So yeah, that got to be a little much. So I had to take a step back and prioritize what I wanted to do. So with the GEAPM implementation, and as everybody knows, a new software implementation is huge. Right. And so I needed to take a step back and focus on that. So I gave up my manager role, which was perfectly fine. I'm very happy where I am. So that's kind of how I became this reliability engineer, was just planning, maintenance. It all goes hand in hand.
Well, that is an incredible story. I mean, that is so inspiring. I mean, I am amazed that you effectively started over to some extent and have ended up where you have. Is just an amazing testament to obviously hard work and smarts that you must have and perseverance. So congratulations on that. That is really incredible. Do you I always like to ask kind of a family question. You hinted at you mentioned 3 boys. Are they out of the house now?
I have 3 sons. They are all either married or in the process of getting married this year. I have 6 grandchildren, and they range from 16 to 6 months.
Wow, that's amazing. Huh. Good for you.
Yeah, it's amazing for me too. I try to visit them as much as I can. They don't all live close to me. They live a few hours away. So I try to visit them as much as I can. And I enjoy the time with my grandsons. They are just so much fun. Sure. I have 4 grandsons and 2 granddaughters.
Okay. That's amazing. Well, good for you. On just kind of like just thinking about that origin story, do you have advice for any young person listening to this who might be thinking about kind of a career in reliability engineering? Given reflecting on your background, what would you suggest? I mean, that was interesting how you kind of started. I mean, really, at the bottom, if you will, and just worked your way up while you did schooling. Do you think that is the path you recommend to folks?
So I would recommend, hindsight being 2020. So one, there are very few colleges, universities in the U.S. that have reliability programs. So one thing is not to get too stressed out about that. Electrical, mechanical, if you can go into an engineering program, it's a good start. My other recommendation too is interns. I mean, internships are huge. Like our company, we do an internship where it's 2 years and you're 6 months in one department and then 6 months in another department. So you get to, learn a lot and you get experience, and you're not just data entry people. We're actually putting them to work, and I would encourage that. I would encourage those types of internships. That way you get that experience. And I would encourage too. So even though you may not have a reliability engineering degree, I would encourage you to apply for jobs that are reliability type jobs, no matter what, because, like I said, there's only a few programs that exist so that you can actually say, hey, I have this, especially fresh out of college. So my recommendation would be apply for jobs. Apply. You got nothing to lose.
Right. That's good. Well, thanks for that. I know there's bound to be people listening who that's going to be really helpful for. Switching now to your role, I know you're focused a lot at that kind of APM role and coordinating it. We always like to talk about KPIs or OKRs or whatever term you use. What are the metrics that you are solving for in your role? How do you sort of track whether or not you're helping that team in those ways?
So we look at, so as a reliability engineer, we look at failure history. We look at reliability growth analysis. We look at the current asset care. So instead of just kind of, let's assume no one knows what I'm talking about. Okay. So when you're looking at failure history, you're looking at obviously bad actors, right? You're looking at the bad actors. You're looking at, number of events, that failures, the mean time between failure, how much it costs, that kind of stuff. Then you're looking at your statistical failure costs, forecasting. So for your reliability growth analysis, and then you're looking at your current asset care. So your maintenance, is there an existing strategy, a maintenance plan, right? How frequently is it being completed, right? So, we may say that we need to do these PMs, but we don't always actually do them. So, looking at those kind of things. And then we look at what we develop new or propose new asset strategies, right? So we make recommendations as far as new tools, new products, new maintenance plans, different things like that. And then we have this lovely, all these dashboards that we have where you can look at those bad actors and you can see all that information, where you can see the risk. We do risk analysis. We calculate risk based on what we're really doing, if we're doing these maintenance, if we're not doing the maintenance, that kind of things. And then we move forward and, start looking at, okay, well, what are we missing? Where's the gap? What do we need to do next? So that's kind of what we do. Like I said, we look at KPIs, we look at so we use RCAs, our FMEAs, RCMs to develop those strategies. There's always the existing maintenance plans, but most plants, it's the OEM, basically it's whatever came out of the manual is what their original maintenance plan is. And then we go through and do analysis and look at whether that's the right answer. We also look at the criticality and determine criticality of assets, because who wants to spend all day doing a maintenance plan for something that you're just going to run to failure and replace because it doesn't make any sense. But that's kind of what we do.
Yeah, that's good. That's really helpful. And also I'm thinking about your role, and obviously that's really helpful from that engineering perspective, but more specifically from a rolling out, you mentioned you took on the role of rolling out that software. How did you put that plan in place, and what did you find to be the most challenging elements to rolling it out? And because I know that anytime you implement software, it's hard to get people to adopt it. So what would you say have been the, whether it's tips and tricks or even strategies to lead to adoption of that software?
So for us at the time, we were not only rolling out GEAPM, we were also rolling out SAP in some places and EdaPro. And so we're rolling out all of these new things all at once. So the best thing that we did as a whole was we had support from the top down. So executive leadership where it's pushing and explaining to everybody the importance is. The other thing is start with your low hanging fruit, right? Get some buy-in right away. So if there's a port, like for us, our GEAPM software, we started with a rounds portion of it because that immediately people are already doing rounds, operators,
Okay.
maintenance techs are already doing rounds. So they could immediately see where, hey, somebody's looking at the data. What I'm doing has, some meaning. And so that was really a quick way to get buy-in. Practice your elevator pitches too. Practice those talks, so that when people come and ask you, hey, so why? And why should I do this? Because, in 3 years, we're just going to go to something new. If it's the right tool and it's a tool that progresses with you, with time and technology and innovation, and, then you won't have to worry about that every 3 years thing, because you'll stick with it. If it grows with you, you'll stick with it. So do your homework, and when you're looking at software or, programs and things like that, look, do your homework and make sure you find the right one.
And for you all, did you roll out the software? You mentioned starting with rounds. Let's just use that as a for example. Did you think about doing it kind of plant by plant, or did you more say, here it is, let's find the early adopters regardless of the plant? How did you think about sequencing? Because it's, you can't just send an email and say, everyone start using this. There's got to be some of that. How did you go about that?
Well, we went through and did plant by plant training. So, you can't, like you said, you can't just toss it out there and say, hey, use this. And they don't know how to even begin. So we did plant by plant training, but we more or less rolled it out all at once globally. But we did go around plant by plant and do the training so that they knew what and how to use it, what the benefits were, and things like that. And of course, being globally, we had to have, different languages and everything. So we used a third party to help us out. And just, on another note, another recommendation is, before you roll out any software that has to do with asset performance, make sure you have your work management processes in order and documented, because you want any asset performance management software to fall in line with those work management processes, those existing work management processes. So that's good, a really good hand-in-hand thing, and kind of a prep, because garbage in, garbage out.
It's great. So yes, effectively, you said you trained kind of on a plant by plant basis. Obviously, you started with let's make sure work processes are there, and then plant by plant, let's make sure we get training as we kind of roll out this software.
And we train specific to the roles too. So, the reliability engineer at a plant doesn't need the same training as the operator who's only going to be doing rounds, and using that for it. So we did role specific training, which helped out.
That's great. That's really helpful. I know people will appreciate that as well. Now, obviously, our company, we do a lot in the world of root cause analysis. How important are RCAs in your processes, in your company processes? How are you using them, and what does that look like at your company?
So we are huge into RCAs. I can't even imagine to give an estimate of how many RCAs are done in a month globally. Not even a clue. But we have, we have a whole procedure. We have a standard for RCAs. We have, it's a published standard globally. We use the PROACT methodology for 99.9% of our RCAs, except for safety. Safety uses a different software. But with GEAPM, we have the PROACT. We also have the on-prem version, that's separate from GEAPM. We're looking at Easy RCA, so we're kind of all over it. But like I said, we have certain triggers that trigger. We have a matrix setup that has triggers and tells us what level of RCAs to do, depending on what the risk is. So whether we look at cost, we look at downtime, and try to figure out there what level it needs to be, and safety, of course.
That's great. So that's obviously, you're saying it's a very important part of your process. Well, we appreciate you working with us. But yeah, we know that even without us, you all are just dedicated to this being a major tool that you all use. So that's helpful to understand that part of your process. As you think about kind of the future, and I know you can answer this question either specifically to GEAPM or outside of that, but just where are you seeing innovation in terms of technology and how it's improving APM and just really the reliability world?
So lots of machine learning and AI. I mean, lots of ML AI. We use it daily. Well, as a matter of fact, my company is really big on innovations. We really push for ideas and thoughts and new ways to do better. And so like right now I'm taking a generative AI class, which our company provided to everyone, to go ahead and to take it, and because we want to learn. And,
Yeah, that's amazing.
And the more you know about AI, the better off you are because you know the good, the
Yes.
bad. People that just jump in don't know. But yeah, we are. We use, like I said, we use modeling, we use machine learning, we use AI every day. GEAPM is starting to implement and use more AI as well. So, yeah, it's huge, and it's great to stay a step ahead.
Have you seen, so I'll just share, I've practically used AI quite a bit to, I have a daughter, a 6-year-old, so I created a coloring book primarily using AI, gave it some ideas, and it would, so there's definitely a bunch of use cases. What have you seen as so far the most practical use cases of AI for the business?
We use it a lot for modeling, basically, because it predicts that next step. You use the supervised learning. So where it's, it does over time, it learns, and, you can forecast things. You can predict what's coming next. You can, and it's easier because you don't have to know the math.
Right.
But you still need to validate and verify. The AI is not always right.
So that is something you are already using AI on modeling in the organization. That's great. That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think we're only, as everybody says, kind of scratching the surface. But it's also very interesting. Just an example of a company investing in just more training to get their people just aware of what's happening in the world of AI. That's good to hear as well. Well, I always like to kind of have my last question be, what is kind of one last piece of advice? I mean, you've already shared a lot. I think we've learned a lot about just everything from if you're younger looking for a job, how to think about APM, just all kinds of things you've taught us. But is there any last thing in your job or field of expertise that you think you would love reliability engineers to hear?
Yes. I think one more thing that I found that's very useful and very important is networking.
Hmm.
Join groups, join whatever, because if there's something you don't understand, if when you have a job, if there's a problem that you're having, I guarantee you someone else has had the same problem. And so I would highly recommend networking. It's so useful and so beneficial.
Great. And just very practically, is there like a networking? Are you like a LinkedIn, like social, like networking that way, or kind of an offline? What specifically, if I was saying I'd like to take a step in that, would you say?
Okay, so first thing I would say would be I'm a member of SMRP. I have my
Okay.
CMRP, so there's that. They have a site, and where you can go back and forth and talk about different problems and ask questions, and other members will answer. LinkedIn, of course, you can always reach out on LinkedIn. I'm a part of. I'm also in my spare time, I'm on the board of accreditation for the Association of Technology Management and Applied Engineering. So I go
Okay.
around to other colleges and accredit programs in engineering at different colleges. And
Wow.
so by doing that, I'm going into colleges, career fairs, things like that. Those are all networking opportunities. Take count of who you know, because there's
That's
people
good.
that you may not pay attention to what job they do, or and it may be something that you're interested in. They can hook you up and connect you. Use those connections. Don't ever be afraid to use your connections.
That's great. Well, this has been just really helpful things that you've shared with us, Michelle. So thank you. And really want to just thank again. We've had Michelle Legge on our call today. She's a senior reliability engineer and GEAPM manager for AES. And she has just provided us with a wealth of insights. So thank you so much for being on. We do appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And to all those listeners, again, we're really about helping engineers and really anyone learn to take steps to more successfully apply technology and apply it to their jobs in practical ways and solve problems as they do it. So, of course, as a company, our company provides RCA training, resources, and materials. So I encourage you to check out reliability.com. And if you're looking to dig any deeper into RCAs, we'd love to share our software with you, Easy RCA. If that can be helpful, that's great. But as Michelle mentioned, there's other tools out there as well that can also be useful. So thank you all for joining us today on our quest to make the world a more reliable place. And we'll see you all on the next episode of Reliability 4.0. Take care.